German Nati, Mukhursian Ilka on another.
Se tobolo como motsweding FM.
Because initially
zekerheid. Intersection. Motor traffic again on Helen Joseph Street, traffic on Sekame Street, the Dr. James Moroka intersection. Heavy traffic on Freiburg Road, the Mudiri Muleba intersection. And we have free-flowing traffic on Nelson Mandela Drive. In Pretoria, there is moderate traffic on Madiba Street, turning left onto Sisulu, then right onto the R104. Moderate traffic on Kusimamkuru Street, heading into the CBD. And heavy congestion on Struben Street at the Detroit Street intersection. Please note that there are isolated showers throughout the province. Please ensure that your headlights are on and that you're observing the rules of the road. If we have missed anything, please let us know on the UConnect app. For UFM traffic in Nauru Sing Mafora, and welcome to your Thursday edition of the Midday Boost. Let's get it started.
990 and save on our tile combos from only 949.90. Spend 2,500 or more and you could win a home makeover worth 50,000. Deals end 30 April. Top Tier Tiles, where every price is a low price. T's and C's apply.
The Big Breakfast Show.
Ipepe boy. We used to say Ipepe, Bentina Coffin Vaba, Mom's kidding.
I don't know. I think we knew the lyrics.
Yeah.
We are that progressive.
So you sang it exactly as it says on
Yes,
the song.
yes.
I'm not sure that frequent.
Duidelijk geraakt. Jullie weten wie het principe bereikt met.
Midday to 1 p.m. Update at noon with Sakina Kamwendo.
Well, thanks so much, Ondela. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for being with us here on Update at Noon. And what an interesting, what a busy news morning it has been. So the Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky landed in South Africa last night, and he is currently meeting with President Cyril Ramaphosa at the Union Buildings in the nation's capital in Pretoria. And then some other news, political parties giving press briefings today. Started early this morning with the Democratic Alliance, and we just saw one where the ANC, along with some of the parties, in fact all of the parties that supported them in that vote in the National Assembly for the adoption of the fiscal framework, they also held a press briefing a short while ago, and much being said by all of these political parties, and this of course in a reaction to communication from the Minister of Finance about the 0.5 percentage point of VAT not going ahead on the 1st of May. So that is one of the big stories at the moment. Also in KZN, back in court in the Pietermaritzburg High Court, is the application by French arms company Thales that their prosecution in the Jacob Zuma corruption case be stopped, and that Thales be acquitted on all charges. And if you'll remember, this of course stems from South Africa's 1999 arms deal, and Thales now says in court papers that two key figures in the case have passed away, and that makes it impossible for them to mount a defense. So that particular case ongoing there in the Pietermaritzburg High Court. We'll hear from our reporters as well as those on other court stories as well.
SAFM supports a litter-free South Africa. Play your part in keeping our surroundings and environment clean. SAFM, leading the conversation. Sakina Kamwendo on SAFM.
Now, political parties continue to react to the reversal of the 0.5 percentage point VAT increase that was announced by National Treasury earlier today. The ANC, together with several other political parties, which include the IFP, Action SA, the PAC and Good Party, are currently engaging members of the media in Sandton, north of Johannesburg. Now, the group, which includes members of Government of National Unity, say that the VAT increase withdrawal is a victory for all parties which were engaged in this critical discussion over the last few weeks. ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula says that the terrain of coalitions and a government of national unity continues to be a lesson for the ANC.
As the ANC, we recognize that we have entered a period of coalitions at the national government level, which we may characterize as uncharted waters. Before, we used to engage differently with the budget. In the government of national unity and coalition government, we have learned our lessons in relation to how we seek to engage with matters of the budget. We may have performed better in these uncharted waters, approaching the budget as a political tool in the governance of any other country. The budget is key as a political tool to determine stronger governance in different countries. If we had a wealth of experience, we may have approached this differently, meaning negotiations and engagement with political parties among ourselves, with Treasury and Parliament oversight prior the passing of the budget is a new terrain that we all need to learn about and gain as an experience when dealing with this particular matter. We started from 2%, we ended to 0.5%. And in engaging with the budget, we made a submission to the Minister of Finance, like all other parties, after the 2nd of April fiscal framework vote in Parliament. We also held extensive discussions through this month, from the 9th of April, intensive discussions in the past 2 weeks in the same hotel with different political parties, even those who have chosen to go to court, to engage with them on the question of the budget. And that has showcased on our part that we've got a bigger role to play than just political posturing for the country. Even those that went to court, we engaged them. But we did not ask them to get out of court. They did engage, they did raise their views about the budget. And we do appreciate political parties that have come together to pass the budget framework.
And that was ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula. Meanwhile, the IFP says it rejects a statement made by National Treasury that the decision to reverse the VAT increase necessitates the withdrawal of Social Security.
So that we maintain and sustain the social relief packages that are embedded in the budget. This includes the increases to social grants and other related grants. It ensures that the social relief of distress is maintained. It also must ensure that the zero-rated items basket must be expanded in order for the poor to actually continue receiving the relief that they so urgently need. What this moment teaches us, importantly, is that we will have to be a government in constant communication and talking to each other, not past each other. And there is no constructive conversation that's going to take place in the court of law.
And that was IFP's Mkhuleko Hlengwa. Action SA President Herman Mashaba, meanwhile, says that political parties outside the GNU can also play a critical role in shaping the country's future and progress. All right, don't have that for you, but of course we were listening through that throughout, and hopefully you'll be able to hear that in subsequent programs. But the Patriotic Alliance took a swipe at the Democratic Alliance for what they called attempts to extort the ANC and the GNU over the VAT debacle. And here's the Patriotic Alliance's Deputy President, Kenny Kunene.
The Democratic Alliance, in its negotiations
negotiations over VAT increase made some demands. The Democratic Alliance indicated that they will vote for the VAT increase if a certain port was privatized, if the NHI was removed, if the Bella Act was removed. So the DA was going to vote for VAT increase had the ANC and the GNU parties agreed to be extorted by them. So when the extortionists could not get their way, they ran to the courts. So the DA has no moral authority to claim victory for the removal of the VAT increase. They were outside of the process of engagement. The parties that are sitting here can take credit, and South Africans.
And that was the Patriotic Alliance Deputy President Kenny Kunene. And of course, this is a media briefing that took place a short while ago. If I'm not mistaken, it may still be ongoing, with all of the parties making their points known and also giving their views on what the way forward perhaps would be. But of course, we also listened to the Democratic Alliance earlier this morning, and they addressed this very matter. And if we have that, as Zelma says yes. So let's let you in on what the DA had to say.
This is the victory of all South African taxpayers. We'd like to thank you all for coming into this fight shoulder to shoulder with us. We'd like to thank you in your thousands for having signed our petitions and stood with us in this battle. And we will continue to fight for all South Africans, especially the poor and the marginalized, in seeking economic growth, in seeking job creation, and in seeking responsible public spending, so that the government does not keep on raising your taxes to fund unlawful expenditure, corruption, and sheer waste. And so the DA will now be pushing very hard for the necessary spending review. Long before this process began, we made proposals to the national government on how we could dramatically save money in the current budget to avert and prevent an increase in any form of taxation. The minister refused to listen to this. He kept on making it an issue about cutting frontline services when all the savings that the DA had proposed avoided cutting the crucial frontline services. We want to cut waste. That's what we want to do. And we want to cut corrupt and fruitless expenditure. And that is what our spending review seeks to achieve, which will include obviously a review of all the ghost workers in the state to save many millions of rands that is costing the taxpayer at the moment. So there's going to have to be a spending review. We're going to have to look at where we can cut waste, not frontline services, and where we can protect the poor, especially from any increase in taxation.
And that was the DA's Helen Ziller. And for more now, we joined on the line by the EFF's Sinao Tambo. Mr. Tambo, thanks for your time. Welcome to Updated Noon.
Thanks, Akina. Greetings to the listeners.
So your reaction to the statement that was released by the finance minister?
Look, I think the first thing we must dispel, because there's a lot of victory laps that are going around, which might mislead South Africans as to what is the objective reality now. So the EFF doesn't seek to burst anyone's bubble, but the reality right now, as we speak today, there's no effective reversal of the VAT hike. There's a proposed amendment bill that the Minister of Finance seeks to introduce into the Parliament of South Africa to effect a reversal of the VAT hikes that were introduced and the adjustments to the personal income taxes as well. So that is the first point. So we need to calm down and look at the situation as it is. But the second point as well is that the minister makes a proposal that is going to reverse the submission of the Division of Revenue Bill and the Appropriations Bill and submit them in the next coming weeks. Now, this doesn't speak to the fact that the Money Bills Act of Parliament, which governs those two bills and their processing in Parliament are determined by the fiscal framework. Now, when they are reintroduced in the next few weeks, which fiscal framework is going to determine how they are structured as well, because the current fiscal framework, which was adopted in Parliament, not only contains VAT hikes, but is currently being disputed in the courts of law. And I think the third thing that we must all reflect on more meaningfully is that the Minister of Finance has said that the shortfall that is going to come as a result of the cutting of the VAT hikes is going to be offset by budget cuts or expenditure cuts, which speaks to him replacing the VAT increases with austerity measures, which will see budget cuts to health, budget cuts to education, budget cuts possibly to social grants. So this past 30-day period, because everyone who is speaking today in that press conference is speaking as if it's a victory that is a product of their agreement of 30 days to seek alternatives, doesn't include any alternative revenue generation mechanism proposals by any political party, because the Minister of Finance says that the VAT hikes are going to be offset by expenditure cuts. So it means that there's no consideration of any proposal by anyone. So those are 3 points I think are important for us to note. But fourthly, and perhaps lastly, before I hand it over back to you as well, Parliament now has 6 days to pass the amendment bill that the Minister of Finance seeks to introduce. This must have public participation. This must be processed by committees. Ultimately, must be processed by the National Assembly. Now, for this to happen over the next 6 days would be a miracle, considering that there's a weekend in between. So we want to call for calm. We want to call for South Africans to look at the situation objectively. We are not against the scrapping of VAT hikes, but we want just to ensure that this is feasible in terms of law, and that we're not told that the VAT hikes will be introduced on the 1st of May and scrapped a couple of months after, because it's not possible to implement in the next coming days.
So what you say
under review, because we believe that they were adopted procedurally. And of course, the other part B speaks to the VAT Act, which gives the minister powers to pronounce on a VAT increase unilaterally. Now, it's important to note as well that there's no legislation that allows the minister to reverse the VAT Act unilaterally. That is why he seeks to introduce an amendment bill. So we are going to be engaging with the legal team of the Minister of Finance to hear, because we haven't received those proposed out of court settlements yet, and that will determine the engagement moving forward as to our participation in the court process as well. But as things stand, we haven't reached resolution on that, but we are still awaiting the judgment from the court on the 29th of April.
Mr. Tambo, thanks so much for your time. That's reaction from the EFF, their spokesperson there, Sinao Tambo. And some analysis now on what is happening and what we've heard from the various parties. We joined on the line by economist Klanti Pai. Klanti, thanks so much for your time. Welcome to Update at Noon.
Hello?
Hello, Klanti. Can you hear me?
I can hear you very well. How are you, Sakina?
I'm great, thanks. Thanks so much for joining us. Klanti, quite a bit to unpack here in terms of that statement on the reversal of the VAT increase by the Minister of Finance. And we just heard from the EFF who cautioned against all the victory laps or otherwise. What is your reading of what is stated here?
There's a lot of issues here. I think the one, of course, is this particular sort of that they are introducing a new framework. So there are, new kinds of expenditure and revenue collection. So basically, almost as if we're saying, look, we are going to review what we first said to the country and how we're actually going to make plans, both in terms of income and expenditure. Now, that's a very interesting one, because I think things have changed since we last started this process. You'll remember that before this, the Minister of Finance gave us a forecast of growth at 1.9%. We now know that the world, the IMF, has said that actually they don't think that we can reach that. They are thinking 1%. Now that's very important if we think about revenue collection, because obviously that's where we actually collect a lot of the revenue. But we also know that in terms of just the VAT itself, there's been changes in terms of the inflation, because we collect VAT when people spend, and there's that bit between the inflation, our earnings, where we say that's a real income that we spend, and inflation has come down, and perhaps there's a little bit of an open window there for us to be able to collect a little bit better. So things have changed. So it will be very interesting then to see within that new context how they plan to go forward.
So going back to the fiscal framework and the point that Sinao Tambo was just making now about the fiscal framework that was adopted, taking into account, of course, some of the provisions that you just spoke to. So again, Parliament has to now go back and relook, what has been said.
Yeah.
And is all of this with the necessary processes that need to evolve going to take place in 6 days?
And that's really the difficulty, because we have already lost a lot of time. So we can't afford to lose any more time. You'll remember that, usually it's in this month that actually, the financial year starts, where people can actually start collecting. So one of the things that we are now seeing is that in 6 days to be able to do all of that work, and to do work that's very, very detailed, because, nobody actually has told us. Remember, the minister, in our view, would have said, look, he's given this thing his best work. So when he presented the budget the first time around, the fiscal framework was his best work, certainly the expenditure was his best work, and certainly how the way he was thinking about revenue was his best work. So perhaps one thinks more improvements now have to come to the other parties who seem to have better ideas, because it's difficult to see how the minister now sort of changes, unless we are going to face new kinds of discussions and debates around how we reduce expenditure. And I can tell you that in this environment, that is something that is going to be very, very controversial, because nobody has actually spoken about reduction of expenditure in a way that can support growth, but also shoulder the needs of the most vulnerable. And those two things, unfortunately, have to happen together. I think people think that we can actually do one or the other. We must do both if we don't want to find ourselves here again next year. We must support the poor, but at the same time grow the economy so that the poor actually are not finding themselves vulnerable over the many years to come. So it's going to be a very, very interesting discussion. I was listening even to the Secretary General of the ANC speaking about that what they are doing is to make sure that this is not a budget that is of austerity. So one thinks that he's talking then about an expansionary budget, and can we actually afford that given that we have such little resources?
But the statement speaks about adjusting expenditure, and I just want to read, because I think this is important. The IFP's Mkuleko Sengwa touched on this, as did Sinawa Tambo. In that statement, it goes on to say the decision not to increase VAT means that the measures to cushion lower income households against the potential negative impact of the rate increase now need to be withdrawn and other expenditure decisions revisited. That's quite significant.
It's huge. It's really, really huge, because what is it? We know that, for example, that over 60% of South Africa's budget is to social service, or at least to social support. So it's not as if actually we are not already spending there. So one has to think then and then we obviously need to still spend on infrastructure. We need to spend on municipalities. These are growth inciting
money won by real people right here in Mzansi. So the question is, why not you? The next winner could come from your hometown. Buy your tickets now in store on nationallottery.co.za, the mobile app, cell phone banking, or simply dial *120*7529# for USSD. Yahusha. Play. Players must be 18 years old or play responsibly. E2 is the proud operator of the National Lottery.
Update at noon with Sakina Kamwendo, midday to 1 p.m.
Right, 21 minutes before 1, and of course the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is in the country, and he is being hosted by President Cyril Ramaphosa at the Union Buildings in Pretoria, and President Ramaphosa currently speaking, so let's take you there live.
We have just concluded with President Zelensky successful talks during which we exchanged views on how to consolidate and deepen the bilateral relations between our two countries. We also discussed how ministers from both sides can engage to deepen and broaden those relations. We noted the growing interest in expanding relations in peace diplomacy, post-conflict reconstruction and development, and the empowerment of our people, especially women. We also discussed the opportunities for cooperation in areas such as agriculture, trade, education, infrastructure, and energy, and other social engagements. We're pleased that our ministers have held discussions amongst themselves to strengthen the various areas in which we can cooperate between our two respective countries. We acknowledge the significant strides that Ukraine has taken, and in particular, President Zelensky, to expand relations with the African continent. We note the provision of grain in areas of food, the expansion of agricultural cooperation, and the opening up of the grain hub to the port of Mombasa in Kenya. These are direct outcomes of discussions that were held when we visited Kyiv in June 2023 as part of the African Peace Initiative. Our engagement today was an opportunity to discuss our shared interest in advancing peace, security, stability, and sustainable development on the continent, in Ukraine and across the world. We have reinforced our common commitment to the respect of the rule of law in international relations, multilateralism, the central role that the United Nations plays in global governance, and the maintenance of global peace and security. South Africa is deeply concerned about the continuing conflict in Ukraine. From the experience of our own journey from the nightmare of apartheid to democracy, we value the importance of engaging all parties to conflicts to achieve peace and a just, enduring solution to wars and conflicts. If there is one thing that our history as South Africans has taught us, it is that diplomacy and dialogue are more powerful than any weapon that anyone can use. It is this understanding that informed South Africa to participate in the African Peace Initiative and South Africa's subsequent and continuing participation in the Ukraine peace formula. I had an opportunity to speak to President Trump yesterday, or this morning rather, to discuss the peace process in Ukraine. We both agreed that the war should be brought to an end as soon as possible to prevent further death and destruction. President Trump and I also agreed to meet soon to address the various other matters regarding our relations between South Africa and the United States. We both spoke about the need to foster good relations between our two countries. Earlier in the week, I had a call with President Vladimir Putin, where we both committed to work together towards a peaceful resolution of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. South Africa stands ready to continue to support all credible as well as inclusive multilateral efforts at achieving a just and sustainable comprehensive peace. And we call upon all parties, both Russia and Ukraine, to ensure that there is a comprehensive ceasefire, an unconditional ceasefire, so that discussions and negotiations can start between the two countries. President Zelensky, as he himself will say, told me that as Ukraine, they are ready to engage in discussions and negotiations with Russia, and they are also ready to have a comprehensive, unconditional ceasefire. This, we believe, is the best way towards ending the war between Russia and Ukraine. So we have today, between myself and President Zelensky, reaffirmed the bonds of friendship and solidarity that exists between our two countries. We look forward to continued engagement and cooperation that benefits our peoples and our two countries. President Zelensky, I hope that you will leave our shores of South Africa with good memories. Much as your visit has been really short, I do hope that in time to come, you will come back to visit the most beautiful country in the world, South Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Szanowny President.
Dear Mr. President, Mr. President Ramaphosa, dear those attending this venue, dear team members, dear media representatives, it is an honor to me today to pay a visit to your nation today, still more that it comes on the eve of the Freedom Day festivity that truly reflects the core values of your nation. This is what unites us together, our will for freedom, for independence, for equality, for respect. These are all values understood in every, very important at the level of our ministers, those meetings with opinion leaders, with studentship. We are thankful for your support of Ukraine, for your sharing our understanding that this war has to be ended as soon as possible. This was our primary topic to discuss with President Ramaphosa when he had been on a visit to Ukraine. I remember him saying those very important words about the need to reach a ceasefire as soon as possible and unconditional.
A diplomat and a national inspiration, and even a military commander, Catherine must battle to save her love with the king and to preserve the peace and prosperity of their reign. The Spanish Princess Season 2 is Saturdays at 9:30 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
The Red Devils want to add more heat in Cairo to make life difficult for Masalawana, but Gabrielo refused to shake and break. They are on a mission to elevate their game and march to the final with big smiles. It is do or die. This is the second leg semi-final encounter of the Total Energies CAF Champions League. Catch the incredible action of African football. Al Ahly FC versus Mamelodi Sundowns FC this Friday, 25 April at 5:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus, S3, SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4, and SABC radio stations. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. In just 10 years, over 850 million winners have shared more than 31 billion rand with the National Lottery. That's not a dream, that's real money, won by real people, right here in Mzansi. So the question is, why not you? The next winner could come from your hometown.
Take offense when they see that we are fraternizing with Ukraine, their supposed enemy. This is very interesting.
Afternoon, Saki. Towards elections, each and every party is going to target the whites instead of service delivery, like EFF. I want to know what about the illegal immigrants that is busy with Orania, just like MK, because they want to be in a gravy train again. They are lying. That is true. That song of Mantis Janjis. Thank you. Saki.
Good afternoon, Sakina. Is there anything making sense that Kendi Kunene can say without mentioning the DA? It seems he came to government just to criticize the DA. Anonymous from Soweto. Thank you.
Well, thanks for those messages. Nkoshin Pete says, Sakina, all these parties are the same. It's about themselves and not us. But the ANC is no more the ruling party. Zaki Matebula says, Sakina, SK, can you ask Home Affairs why they're not allowing walk-ins when we want to do IDs? Their booking system is always full with bookings from January until now. I can't get a date for my child who is in matric currently. I think we'll follow up on that one because I think I heard something somewhere else last week about matriculants and struggling to get bookings for IDs, but I was under the impression that there was a specific